Space, the final frontier. These are the podcasts of the podcast Enterprise. Its only mission to explore story structures, to analyze our favorite characters and plot lines, to boldly talk about what everyone has seen before. Hello and welcome everyone to Podcast Enterprise. This is the place where we watch Star Trek, the original series episodes, and look at the story structure, look at how we like the story arcs, the character arcs, and everything else in between, and give you a gist of what the story is like. I am Bala Ramudurai, and with me I have my co host Parvati Ramkumar. Say hello, Parvati.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Podcast Enterprise. We have a lot of fuzzies in our episode today.
Fuzzies, yes.
Yeah.
The trouble with tribbles. So
Yes.
that's what the episode is called, and we'll see what trouble the tribbles caused and by trebling in size. Okay, I'm done.
There are a lot of possibilities. When this episode begins, you find that the USS Enterprise is en route to a space station called K7. Now, this space station is quite large and it is very close to a planet called Sherman's Planet. And Sherman's Planet is one of those strategic locations. It is a strategic planet which is claimed by both the Federation and the Klingons. And the only thing that is keeping these two races from going at war with each other is the Organian Peace Treaty. So,
Yeah.
according to the Organian Treaty, neither of these races are allowed to fight each other. The Klingons are not allowed to fight the humans are not allowed to fight the Klingons. They have to figure out some sort of a peaceful way to resolve any issue they may have. And that also applies to Sherman's Planet. So, as the Enterprise is en route to Deep Space Station K7, which is the last stop before Sherman's Planet, they receive a code 1 alert from the space station. Now, code 1 alert is something that indicates near total destruction and an attack. So the Enterprise goes into red alert. Kirk orders them to travel at warp 6 speed. But when they get to the space station, they find absolutely nothing. There's no Klingon attack. There's absolutely nothing. It's total silence. Everything is peaceful. And Kirk gets communication from the space station manager called Lori, who says that he has a problem and Kirk better come down and there is no attack, which infuriates Kirk to no end. So he goes down to the space station with Spock, and they meet a very charming individual called Niels Barris, who is a undersecretary in charge of Sherman's Planet for that quadrant. And he has issued a code 1 alert because he has this peculiar wheat, as Kirk likes to call it, called quadrotriticale, which is the only thing that will grow on Sherman's Planet. He has several tons of them stored on Deep Space Station 7, and he wants Kirk to supply him with guards to guard the storage compartments. And for that, he has issued a code 1 alert, and immediately Kirk and he are at loggerheads because neither can see eye to eye. Kirk believes that this guy is acting too powerful, and he feels that Kirk is being very unreasonable. In any case, he also has a very short tempered aide called Aunt Darwin, who has some secrets of his own, as we'll discover. While all of this is happening, Kirk also declares shore leave because they've come so far, and the crew comes down to the space station. And here you also get introduced at the bar of the space station to a very flamboyant merchant called Cyrano Jones, who is selling a lot of things. He's trying to sell gems, he's trying to sell some Antarian glow water. The barkeeper is not buying his stuff, but Uhura, who has come down there for her show, finds him selling a small, furry, purring, musical little creature called a tribble. She's immediately taken in by that creature. She wants it, she buys it, she takes it back to the Enterprise. And there the troubles begin because the tribbles start multiplying. Soon there are 8, then there are several more, and then Dr. McCoy cannot figure out how these things are multiplying. The ship is soon overrun with tribbles. They're everywhere. They're on the bridge, they're in the engine room, they're in the air vents, they're in the food synthesizers, they're absolutely everywhere. And while Kirk is getting a headache with this, the Klingons decide to orbit space station K7. Captain of the Klingon battle cruiser and his aide come down to deep space station K7, and now Kirk has an extra headache because he has to somehow deal with them and prevent an all-out war. So he tells them that they can only bring 12 Klingons at a time for shore leave. There's utter pandemonium after that because the Klingons provoke the humans on shore leave, and Scotty starts a fight with them, which results in a great deal of bruising. And then shore leave is cancelled for both of them. While Kirk is trying to grapple with all of these issues, he also manages to corner Cyrano Jones and ask him why he did not warn them about how quickly the tribbles reproduce. Nobody knows how exactly they reproduce, but they do. Then it strikes Kirk that since they're getting into the air vents and into the food synthesizers on board the Enterprise, they've probably gotten into the storage compartments on Deep Space Station K7, which is proven right because on examining the storage compartments of the space station, he finds that the tribbles have eaten all of the quadrotriticale, much to the undersecretary's anger. And he tried to warn Kirk to after the grain, and he hasn't done it. And then the human race is at his disadvantage, and there are a lot of political ramifications apparently. So Kirk now has to launch some sort of an investigation into this, and eventually he finds that a lot of the tribbles who ate the quadrotriticale have died. And it has something to do with the Klingons. Apparently, the tribbles don't like the Klingons, and this becomes important later on. And McCoy tells Kirk that the grain has been infected with some sort of a virus which turns inert once you ingest the grain, and you kind of one thing leads to another and you starve to death. And that's what happened to all of the tribbles. And with a little bit of ingenious deductions along with the tribbles, Kirk finds that Undersecretary's very volatile and short tempered aide is actually a Klingon surgically altered to look like a human. And he is the one who has poisoned the grain to somehow turn the advantage over towards Klingons so that they can create some sort of a warlike situation and invade Sherman's planet. Once this is uncovered, he also manages to have that man arrested, evict the Klingon commander out of Deep Space Station K7, and everything seems peaceful. But once he gets back to the Enterprise, he also finds that there are no tribbles left aboard the Enterprise, and he wonders where they have gone. Scotty, in a very humorous epilogue, informs him that they have transferred all of those tribbles to the engine room of the Klingon spaceship. I mean, the tribbles can't stand the Klingons, and the Klingons can't stand the tribbles. So it's a very humorous ending where all's well that ends well, Bala.
Okay, so this funny episode starts with the teaser with a little joke from Chekhov, where little as Spock puts it. They do describe the Sherman's planet's importance, and it ends with the subspace distress call, priority one disaster or near total disaster distress call. And so there's a red alert, and the Enterprise is barreling towards space station K7 at full war. That's how the teaser ends. So, teaser gives you an idea of what's at stake and that there is some kind of a joke or something there. That's what we see. In the first act, we see that this priority one emergency thing was a no show. Kirk is completely irritated by it because when he tries to find out the nature of emergency, it seems like a more like a prank call rather than a real serious call. Spock and Kirk beam down to the space station to figure out what's going on. Of course, like what Parvati told you, it's all about that grain, and seemed like a very, very trivial reason. But the guy with a huge rank and a title pulled up an entire starship with the captain, with the crew of 400 plus, down to the space station only to guard wheat grains. At the end of the first act, you see that what turned out to be a prank call may turn out to be some sense of realism because Enterprise can detect a Klingon battleship, and so they immediately go on to red alert. But again, only to find that the Klingon captain is sitting right next to the guy in command of K7. Mr. Luri is sitting across the Klingon captain, and they don't seem to be under any kind of distress. This first act also ends with, I mean, it starts off with a emergency but not an emergency, or also ends with an emergency but not an emergency. The second act starts with Captain Koloth and Korax, the Klingons, citing the Organian Treaty and merely informing that they're just taking their shore leave on K7. Somehow doesn't go very well again. So in first act we were introduced to these characters, Barris and his assistant, and the Quadro Titiceli. And
Yeah.
towards the end of first act, you also are introduced to Admiral Fitzpatrick, and now there's also Cyrano Jones, who's somewhere in the backdrop. We see Tribble also in the first act. So all these characters, all these, I don't know, quote unquote props are introduced in the first act itself. The second act starts off with the Klingons now being introduced into the whole, so it becomes really interesting. But then it all is baffling because they seem to say that they are on a peaceful mission and they're not here to quarrel or to start a battle. But
Yeah.
Klingons being Klingons, if the
You
humans
can
don't
never
trust
tell.
him, Kirk never trusts them. So the entire second act, the primary thing that happens is the bar fight. So that's how it ends. Also with the bar fight with some funny scenes with Cyrano Jones enjoying some free drinks, and the bartender also somewhere in there. The dialogue is just funny, funny, funny. So it's the bar fight is certainly funny. It sets up the episode really well. The second act. The third act now starts off with the cancelled shore leave and an entire lineup of the personnel from the Enterprise who are in the bar enjoying their shore leave. However, Kirk is trying to conduct an investigation as to what happened because this is a diplomatic incident. There's the Organian peace treaty on the one hand, and then there's this bar brawl on the other hand. So he's trying to figure that out. Turns out Scotty was the first to throw the punch. The senior most officer throws the first punch. Again, humor, we'll discuss that when we discuss this in detail. It ends with, again, back in K7, they find that the food storage is completely locked, and now the tribbles are everywhere. What started off with Cyrano Jones in first act as just one solitary tribble, now it's everywhere on the space station, on the Enterprise, with everyone, everywhere. It's everywhere. And it's eating up the resources like nobody's business. Kirk realizes that the food storage is in trouble and they're not able to open it. Kirk and Spock together figure out that with so much of food being taken away by the tribbles, the food storage also could be in trouble because it's on the space station. So they immediately go there only to find that it doesn't open because there are just too many tribbles inside the food storage compartment. And once they do manage to open it, Kirk just gets buried with all the tribbles all around him. So that's how the third act ends, with a total funny situation that Kirk finds himself in. Fourth act starts with Barris just can't hold it anymore and he just lets it loose on Kirk. It's about how badly he was treated by Kirk, and Kirk is buried not only with the inside or the whole pile of tribbles, but in his looks like Barris is going to be taking some serious action against Kirk because the Quadro project apparently seems in jeopardy. Now, yes, it does follow. The ending point towards this is that they figure out that the Klingon agent is there on board and is working as a spy with the
And
undersecretary, and his aide is the double agent, the Klingon agent. So, but the tribbles help in this investigation, and then they've helped Kirk figure out that it was indeed poisoned and it was meant for the whole project to be a failure anyway, without the humans knowing it. But tribbles help them figure all this out. So that's how the tension is relieved. But the last scene of fourth act is on the bridge where but now there are no more tribbles. They figure out that Scott is the one who has transported the entire kit caboodle into their engine room, which is the Klingons' engine room, where they will have no trouble at all. So there'll be no trouble at all. So there's the entire triple lot goes there, and it's really funny and it's nice. So that's the ending of the fourth act. A very light moment, as with many other Star Trek episodes. All right, so that was my summary for act structure. So, what did you think about Trouble with Tribbles, Parvati? Let's have the detailed analysis now.
Yeah, I enjoyed this so much. It was funny, and I like the tribbles, and I really like Cyrano Jones because he's so animated and he's shady as hell at the same time because he has all of these things he wants to sell. You know, he has the flame gems, he has the Antarian glow water, and he has a very spiffy jacket, and he wants to sell the tribbles. And he will not tell you what exactly any of those things do. So you're in deep trouble if you buy something from him. I also I also found the play of power very interesting because Kirk here is forced to go to Deep Space Station K7 at Warp 6 because he
Hmm.
fears that there is some sort of a destructive war going on there, and they did
Hmm.
issue a Code 1 alert. And when he gets there, there's nothing. And it's total silence. There are no Klingons inside. There is no destruction. The space station is as pristine as it ever was. And you can't blame him for being annoyed at this point because it is a very serious offense to misuse Code 1, as Spock points out to the Undersecretary Niels Barris. And Niels Barris is that typical bureaucrat, leader type character, diplomat type character we have seen in so many Star Trek episodes. He's utterly insufferable. he, he doesn't listen to reason. He has the power and he will use it. And Kirk better listen to him or else. And Kirk is having the or else because he is also in a bad mood. And they are both at loggerheads right at the start. So it was very amusing to watch. And I think the only thing that kept Kirk from completely losing his mind with this pompous undersecretary was probably Spock. Spock is so level headed throughout the whole thing, and he's trying to tell Kirk to keep his cool, which Kirk does. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened. And I also, Bala, found it very, very funny that they're ultimately, when they come in contact with the Klingons, it's not a war and it's not a confrontation. He's just merely sitting in Mr. Lurie's office, the King Klingon captain. So it's everything is turned on its head here. The tribbles. And it was interesting that this episode hinges on one small furry, okay, one that becomes a million, but small furry purring musical little creature that even Spock is a little taken in by. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's for me, Cyrano Jones totally reminded me of Mud. Okay, so he has
Yep.
the same charm, but never
Yes,
say die. Even if pushed to the
absolutely.
corner, he tries to see the bright side of things,
Ah,
and he knows that he can talk his way out of every possible situation. So until of course the last moment when he realizes that, oh boy, 17.9 years I'm going to be collecting tribbles. So
he
except till
asked for
that
it.
point, he really was looking at the bright side of it, he was doing his business. So I loved this Cyrano Jones character, such a sprightly guy. It's awesome. And he knows his trade very well. He knows what
He
he's
knows his
doing.
trade.
He's,
Yeah.
he's on the gray zone. Spock puts it lightly, right? So he's not guilty of any offense. Well, not any major ones at least. So it says that just under the radar, but shady all the same. So I loved that characters. Actually, all the characters that came up, I totally loved them. Our Barris is just too good. One of the best diplomats that you love to hate.
He, and, he misuses the code one signal and he doesn't realize what he has done because he wants that grain protected. So
Yes.
he's going to go to any lengths to get some guards for it. And it must be very exhausting to be him because according to him everything he does is right, and here is Kirk who is constantly at loggerheads with him, and he's not getting the point that the quadro critically has to be protected. And eventually, what's happened? Niels, he was right? Because the Tribbles ate all of the quadrotriticale and it was poisoned. So
Mm,
it's difficult to pinpoint the blame. I think that was something very interesting in this episode because you can understand Kirk's frustration with this guy, and at the same time, you can understand what Niels Barris is also going through because there is a threat on that space station. He just didn't see it properly. He didn't know that it was his aide causing all the trouble. So in that way, he was kind of dense. But
mm,
overall, I think it was a very peculiar situation. And the other thing I really found hilarious was, of course,
mm.
Scotty starting the fight in the bar.
Oh
So
yeah. No, Scotty was perfectly happy, by browsing through his journal, minding his own stuff.
yes,
It was Kirk who pushed him out of the Enterprise and said, "Go take your shore leave." No, he has to go out there, and he's pushed out there. And what does
and
Scotty
then
do?
pandemonium.
Promptly
Yeah.
pick up pick up a fight.
Yes. And I, in that scene where he picks up that fight at the bar, it's so funny that when Kirk is insulted, he says, "We're mature enough to take a few insults," but then you insult the Enterprise, and that's it. That's the end of the Klingon. He gets punched. It's
Yeah, exactly. And he's stopping Chekhov from going
ah,
berserk, and he's like, "Oh, we can handle a few insults. That's no big
you can
deal."
handle a
And
few insults.
we
Like,
have
yeah,
grown enough.
that's it. Yeah,
Uh,
and he was being so infuriatingly calm about the whole thing, and then decided to move on to insulting the Enterprise. That was it. The end. Fight.
yeah. Yeah, this guy Darwin also comes
Oh
across
yes.
as a pain. Initially itself, we can see that he's throwing these titles around, and the
Mm.
quadrant and level and this and that. And you could totally picture these personal assistants to big shots who are totally proud of the fact that they're personal assistant to these people. So
Ah,
you
exactly.
could see that come across very well.
Yes.
And Kirk being Kirk, he's the soldier that he is. He can't handle diplomats so well. That conflict was so well done and unbelievable.
And unfortunately for Kirk, it always comes to be that he has to meet a diplomat who gets on his nerves. Yeah.
Ambassador Fox in Eminiar 7.
Yes. Everybody is pulling rank on him and they have no idea what they're doing. And Kirk has to deal with so much. And then you have diplomats like Niels Barris over here who decides to use the code one alert and draw the Enterprise, and then there's nothing there. There's no war. There's no invasion. And what he wants is Kirk to provide him with guards to look after the quadrotriticale. And that's another thing that gets on Kirk's nerves. He's the
Ah,
only
yeah.
one who does not know what quadrotriticale is. Everybody knows what that is, including Chekhov. And
No, in fact, it starts off with the first time he says, "Oh, food storage," and you're like, "Food storage, food storage. What are you guys talking about?" He starts there, and
storage
he says,
compartment, storage
"Quadrotically."
compartment. It's he is so angry and so confused, and then he's hit with this quadrotriticale, and he keeps saying wheat, and everybody knows what quadrotriticale is. It,
Except him.
he thought, when he showed that sampling of quadrotriticale to Chekhov, he thought, okay, here's going to be one guy who wouldn't know what this is, but Chekhov, he just gives it one glance and says, ah, yes, quadrotriticale.
Yeah,
So,
this like you said, right? So the
yeah,
humor hinges on the fact that they're giving you this. It's more parodying on themselves also in one way,
yeah,
that they're
yes.
giving this code one, priority one, which is like ultra serious, and then you see
Hmm.
that all that is for this wheat, right? And and then there's this Klingon who are enemies of the humans, and they're taking
Yeah.
a shore leave on their own station. So it's
Yes.
always that flipping it things on what is considered extremely
Yeah.
serious, unpardonable on the one hand, and compare it with
Huh.
the entire opposite of that. So it seems to be like the general trend in the entire episode.
Absolutely. And Captain Koloth was so different from the Commander Corps that we
Oh yes,
encountered during the
yeah.
Organian encounters. And
Mm.
this guy, Captain Koloth has a sense of humor. He's always smiling and he's dramatic and he's not something you would expect from a Klingon captain. He attempts to trick Kirk into doing this and that, and he is just not what you would expect from a Klingon captain.
It was
What is
awesome.
it? Oh, Korax. Yes, Korax is a typical Klingon. He is short-tempered, he's violent, he wants a fight, he gets drunk, and then he insults the Enterprise. That is typical of a Klingon, but not Koloth.
Yes.
Koloth
Yes.
is
Yeah. Yeah. Korak says, "Oh, we've been in space for 5 months," and that's
yes.
like,
He's
yeah.
gnashing his teeth throughout. He is so angry all the time. And that's what you would expect of a Klingon. And
Right.
Koloth, he was refreshing and probably very infuriating also to Kirk because you don't know what's coming next. You
Mm.
you
Yeah.
never know whether Koloth is actually planning to declare war and carpet bomb the entire space station or whether he's just out here for a nice cup of tea. You never know with that guy.
The episode is established in the teaser itself. So when
Yeah.
Chekhov makes these jokes, one is that you can literally smell a Klingon. That's where one of the
Yeah.
jokes start, and then the
Yes.
whole Russian thing, right? He says John Burke. He says, "Oh, Ivan Borkov, or something like that." He says, "It's like
Everything is
John Burke."
Russian.
We have that at least in a quadrotically. Oh, that was invented by a little old lady outside of Leningrad.
Everything is Russian, according to him. He is not going to accept. You can't convince him otherwise because everything is Russian, and there's no point trying to talk him out of it because he's not going to accept it. Everything he manages to turn back to Russia, including Scotch.
Scotch. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
What
invented by a little old lady in
little old lady in
Leningrad. Yeah.
Leningrad.
Also, he says something about that Russian something.
Of course, it's a Russian invention. The whole universe is a Russian invention, according to him.
So
He did a
uh,
great job there.
yeah,
Yeah.
the first act, of course, Spock had been the sort of conscience of Kirk, right? So when Kirk is going out of control, Spock says, "Oh yeah, that gives him the authority to issue such an alert. So you better not question him. I mean, they're totally in his authority."
Will you please calm down? Is what he was before there's some kind of war. Kirk better just calm down. But Kirk is too angry at this point because, again, like I said, he's run into this ridiculous diplomat who was trying to tell him how to do his job. And it's so infuriating. And Niels Barris, he had his reasons. I wouldn't say that he had his reasons to use the code one alert, but he had his
Hmm.
reasons, and Kirk is just not willing to. He's already in a bad mood by this time, so there's no
Hmm.
use. It's a very strange situation that he finds himself in because
Hmm.
ultimately the quadritically is destroyed and the tribbles got into the vents and they got into the storage compartments. It's true, and they
Hmm.
ate all of the grain, but at the same time, if the tribbles hadn't eaten the grain, they wouldn't have known that it's poisoned. So it's all a
Hmm.
very complicated situation that they're in, and it's also very surprising that Undersecretary Niels Barris, he's so rigid in what he does, and he has some very explosive ideas, and he doesn't think twice about drawing the Enterprise to this part of the quadrant.
Hmm.
He is not world wise enough to realize that there's something seriously wrong with his assistant, and who's actually a Klingon.
Yeah.
Very
So when
surprising.
you look at the arc of Barris, it
Yeah.
starts off with that priority one in an
Yes.
emergency disaster call, and
Ah,
it
yes.
it goes through every time Barris tries to do something or get something done through Kirk.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
met with stiff resistance, like the two guard security and all that. And now he's
Ha.
trying to pull, okay, let me go beyond Kirk, and he brings Admiral Fitzpatrick. He's trying to somehow get Kirk to cooperate and do
Yeah.
exactly what he wants to do. Right? So, but
Yes.
it's not working on Kirk. It's just not working.
Technically, the thing with Kirk here is he is doing what Niels Barris is asking, but within certain, he's so angry that he is just doing the bare minimum. So when Niels Barris says, I want guards, Kirk says, okay, I'm giving you guards, but two guards. That's it.
Only two guards.
Only two guards. So technically, he is following orders. He could get court-martialed, and then you get into big trouble.
Yeah, it says you're taking this project too lightly. Oh, I
Too
take the
light,
project very seriously. I'm just taking you lightly.
like you like. It's you I take lightly, which is very insulting. He says he
Um,
has never questioned the intelligence of an officer of the Federation until now. So he's insulting Barris left and right.
Uh, yeah, that totally is summarized by Barris also, right? He says, "You walked all over me, you insulted me, you've done this, you've done that."
It's a
And,
huge list, and Kirk couldn't move at that point because he's surrounded by tribbles.
yeah, so in the third act is when we find out that the tribbles are everywhere in that. He first gets a hint of that in the food processor, that when he wants his
Yeah.
coffee and his food, all he gets is
Yep.
tribble. There's no food at all. So, oh
It's in his
boy.
cup. So they have merrily eaten all of his food, and
Yeah, so he
they
says, "Oh my God, if they're eating my food, they're eating that food also. Oh, this is going to be trouble."
it's going to be big, huge trouble, and he's going to get into trouble. And even after all that, what does he say? He tells Niels Barris to be quiet or he'll have him clapped in irons.
Okay.
He
Ah,
is trapped by the tribbles after he opens the storage compartments on the space station. He is
okay.
drowning in tribbles, and then here Niels Barris goes off on that tirade saying, "You have insulted me, you've disregarded my orders, and this and that." And Kirk finally has enough and tells him to be quiet or he'll have him clapped in irons. He's really losing it. He's becoming a tin plated dictator. Yes.
Yes, Cor-
Absolutely.
Yeah,
He's living up to the
yeah,
reputation.
yeah. Now, this also episode also saw an exchange between Scott and Chekhov. That was very interesting about vodka being soda pop.
Yeah. So we have some sort of ethnic clash because both think that their drink is the best and they're not going to agree with each other.
What transpires also after the first set of insults, and Chekhov is like totally miffed and he's going to do something about it. He switches the drink, right? So he takes the
And he
vodka
drinks
away and
that
puts
and
it.
he takes a sip of that and he looks disgusted. What is this nonsense I'm drinking? This is not vodka.
It's all
I mean, it's bad enough that Scotty told him not to attack Korax and he told him to sit there and take a few insults and all that, and he couldn't express himself as he wanted to, and then he's forced to drink scotch. Want.
yeah. Then Scott really says, "No, the best one, that is the best dialogue delivery. First of all, is insulting the captain. What does he call him? Regular bloodworm, soft and
Regular.
shaped,
That was. I think
soft
he's
and
insulting the
shapeless."
whole human race with that. A regular bloodworm. And then he moves on to Kirk, a tin plated dictator with delusions of godhood. According to
And
Scotty, we're not taking any more of this
then he says, "No, no, it should be hauled away as garbage."
garbage, and
That
that's
did
it.
it.
That's it. We're
That
going.
did it.
It's an all out war after that.
So he's taken one shot at the human race, two
Yeah.
shots at Kirk, and two
Yep.
shots at Enterprise. That was enough for Scotty to get ticked off.
I think, yeah, but he actually didn't care that much about the attacks on the human race
Human race
or the
or
attacks
Kirk.
on. But the Enterprise was it. That was it. Nobody insults the Enterprise.
This one
Which is
thing that
hilarious,
should be.
but also kept switching to Cyrano Jones and him stealing the alcohol from the dispenser.
He's somehow
And
trying to get a free drink. It starts off with the bartender
yep,
saying, "No way, I'm giving you anything away for free."
the last one drink, which the bartender comes right back and snatches it from him. But Cyrano Jones again, he
Only.
manages to slip, yeah, one cup, goblet of that into his pocket, so he has the last laugh.
Oh,
The
yeah.
fifth choice was interesting for Cyrano Jones because finally he can steal the
Intrigue. Very, very.
drinks, yeah, and have something on the house.
Scotty, initially, he didn't want to go away on shore leave. Kirk forced him
Yeah,
to, got into a fist fight,
yeah,
came with
yeah.
bruises and a black eye. And now he is confined to quarters and he loves it. He's like, "Oh, wow, I got my life back."
I can read my technical,
So happy.
and that will teach Kirk to send him on shore leave. Because He resisted it so much, and Kirk thought he knew better.
The scene of the entire episode for me is that food storage compartment where we don't know what happened and the tribbles are everywhere and he's having trouble opening
Yes.
it up and then it's completely buried with these tribbles and they keep dropping. Apparently the trivia is that they wanted to keep him buried in that. The
Yeah.
prop men apparently were kept on tossing tribble after tribble and at some point you could see Shatner look up and say, why don't you guys stop this?
There are too many of these things falling on his head. Yep. He had a lot of trouble here with them because, first of all, they're cute and they're purring and they make these little soft little musical sounds and they're all over the bridge before he can blink. And he's still, even when they're on the bridge, Kirk picks one up and he's looking at it fondly and he's kind of patting them. I mean, even Spock pats them.
So it has a tranquilizing effect. Of course, has no effect on me, and everybody's like staring
I'm
at.
immune, but he's already gone. He's in some dream world.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is very interesting that the Klingons behave as though spiders to the human race.
Oh yeah,
Start.
yeah. They have an irrational hatred towards the tribbles as much as the tribbles hate Klingon.
Mutual hate relationship. It's like I said, it's all like people react to spiders and they want to both run in two directions. It seems like the Klingons do not like fuzzy, soft, purring, cute little things. They're, they're too battle-minded for things like this. So
So then, of course, that gives away that Darwin is actually a Klingon and not a human being.
yes, because the pesky little tribble starts screaming when it sees Darwin. And he can't stand them either because he says, "Get it away from me! I'll talk.
Yeah,
Get it away from
yeah,
me."
that's all the torture that Kirk had to do. Like point a tribble at him twice or thrice.
He calls it a miserable creature and all that. Get it away from me. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. Just get this fuzzy, purring musical thing away from me.
Yeah, in this
Get
episode,
them to confess to something.
McCoy did something perfect also. I think he did a fantastic job in analyzing. They're born pregnant. He's like with his eyes lit up like that. It saves time.
I absolutely love his timing because when Kirk is drowning, literally drowning in those tribbles falling on him from the storage compartment, that is when McCoy decides to make an appearance and say, I figured out how to stop them from reproducing. Just stop feeding them. When there are already 1 million and so many 700,000 or something. I don't know what Spock says, but there are over 1 million tribbles, and that's when he figures out. Just stop feeding them. Simple. And they don't reproduce.
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, it took him time because he didn't know where the head was in the first place. So the tribble. Where does it have a mouth? He doesn't know.
Yeah. Spock versus McCoy was also interesting. I don't see any practical use for that.
Yes, and I am well aware of human behavior and I'm frequently inundated with comments. And he can't stand it. And he sees no practical use for the tribble. They're like ermine violins. My goodness, that was quite an image. Utterly useless. Soft, purring, fuzzy, musical things. What do you do with them? What practical purpose do they serve? Nothing. No use.
Yeah, it doesn't even satisfy his scientific curiosity.
Yeah. What do you do with a small fur ball? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing he can do with them. I like that McCoy told him, I like them better than I like you. So.
In a mutual admiration, I think we're down to that part, right? So where McCoy, Scott, and Spock, they're just bouncing that off each other, saying, "Hey, he did it. No, I didn't do it. I don't want to take any credit. He did it." And then because they don't know how Kirk is going to react to this, what they.
What if he says, let's go after them, warp 8 and get those tribbles back because Argonian peace treaty, you never know. So it's It was a slightly tricky situation, and if he decided that this was a bad idea, then they've all had it.
So finally, Scott reveals it that the kid caboodle into their engine
Yep.
room where there will be
Well, there's no
no
trouble at
trouble
all.
at all.
That was hilarious. Good for them.
Oh, good for them.
That
So
was a very interesting touch.
all in all, it ended. It was really nice. So, what did you like and dislike about this episode, Parvati?
I liked pretty much all of it. I think one of my favorite characters is Cyrano Jones because he is so flamboyant and he's cunning and shady, and he's also very likable and so cheerful throughout the entire episode. He looks shiny. And I also like how they introduced that idea of Kirk challenging authority again, but at the same time, he's also stymied because there's not much he can do. And Niels Barris was also a very interesting character because he's so frustrated with Kirk and whatever Kirk is doing. It is very interesting. And the Spock acting as a foil to Kirk and prevent him from going completely crazy was also very interesting. And the Tribbles are adorable, except for the reproduction thing, they're adorable. And I like those little creatures a lot. The only thing I didn't like is so many Tribbles dying. That was sad.
Oh,
Yeah, and they're such innocent, fuzzy little things, and they don't do any harm to anybody. The maximum they do is scream when they see a Klingon. What about you?
I liked everything in this episode. It is all
Yeah,
very well done.
yeah,
Particularly was Kirk versus Barris,
yeah,
McCoy versus Spock, and
yeah.
Kirk Scotty versus Korax and the Klingons. Cyrano Jones versus the bartender, Cyrano Jones
Oh,
versus
yes.
Kirk. All these matchups were really good. I loved it. Of course, the last scene, the Tribbles versus Klingons. So that's that was the best matchup of them all. So loved it,
Yeah.
loved it, loved it. And the Darwin guy totally reminded me of that assistant of Ambassador Fox. Of course, Darwin had a bigger role, but it was exactly that.
Mm,
So shadow the big ambassador around and be in awe
yeah.
of that big diplomat that you are attached to and all that. So
Yeah.
carry their attache around, their mallet around, whatever, everything that they give you around. I loved the Darwin character as well. So character wise, framing them, giving enough room for humor, all that
Yeah.
was something that I completely enjoyed. Like,
And Darwin did a fantastic job because he's actually a Klingon and he overdid the loyalty to the Earth ambassador.
yeah. Uh, so, our hypothetical question, if a screenwriter were to
Yeah.
appear in our podcast, what would you ask them to change or to explain?
I actually enjoyed this episode in its entirety, so I wouldn't ask them to change anything. Otherwise, it was thoroughly enjoyable and I had a great time watching it. And you?
Well, congratulations. It's a fantastic episode. That's what I would say. One of the most
Yeah,
memorable episodes that I have
absolutely.
seen. Full length humor, very rare in. So it's a, let's say, a welcome relief in otherwise a very serious atmosphere in the other episodes. Chill out, relax, and have fun. That was it. That was
Yep.
the whole idea of the episode.
Congratulations for creating a Klingon captain who was so different from all the other Klingons we've seen.
Oh, he's the same actor that played Squire of Gothos, correct?
He
William
is
Campbell.
totally unpredictable.
Okay, so that was it for this episode. Thank you so much, Parvati. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you and bye.
Bye, everyone.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening to the podcast Enterprise. Please do share your reviews with us and please share this podcast with any of your writing friends or trickies. Live long and prosper.